What's up, guys? It's TheTechGuru here, coming at you from feed.com/TheTechGuru. Today we are going to make this jammer. Alright, let's go through some of the components used to make this version 2 jammer. This particular jammer uses 1.2mm wire. You can also use 1mm wire for the main coil and 0.5mm wire for the smaller coil. You wrap 6 turns around the side of an old 9-volt battery. Once you're done with the 6 turns, from here to where this ends, which would be about right here, is going to be roughly 10 inches, which would also be 25.4 centimeters or 254 millimeters. Once you have the 10 inches or the 254 millimeters, you just coil it up and then you'll end up with this coil. Now this coil should be roughly 1 1/8 inch wide or 28.5 millimeters wide. This transistor used for this version is a 2SC2078 or the NTE235 or the 2SC1969, etc. So here we have the transistor. You'll notice a negative wire and a positive wire. The negative will run to the emitter, the positive will run to the collector. Now keep in mind that this back heatsink tab of the transistor is also the collector. You're going to take your 220 PF capacitor and connect it to the collector, which would be this back heatsink tab. The other end of that 220 PF is going to go to the start of your smaller coil. Your base is going to be connected to the end of the larger coil, the 1.2mm. Let's flip it around. You'll notice I have a small little heatsink just to be safe. Okay, this capacitor here is at 47 PF and it runs from collector to emitter. This is a 15K resistor and that runs from base to collector. From the emitter you want to hook two 47 PFs in parallel, and that will connect to the other end of your smaller coil. Let me adjust the light. If you look carefully you can see it. So this is actually the back of the transistor right here, and we have the heatsink. This would be your base, collector, emitter. adjust the light so it's a little bit better. Okay, so from emitter goes 247 PF capacitors to one end of your 0.5 millimeter small coil, and the other end of the small coil connects to a 220 PF, which connects to the back heatsink tab, which is also the collector pin. So collector, 220 PF, small coil. Emitter, two times 47 PF, small coil. Main coil directly to base. Positive to collector, negative to emitter. You're going to hook a 10K from base to collector. I'm sorry, 15K. You want to use a 15K in this circumstance. A 15K from base to collector, and a 47 PF from collector to emitter, which if I flip it around, you'll see. So that's base, this is collector, you have a 15K resistor. Right here, the 47 PF goes from collector to emitter. Emitter goes to 247 PF capacitors out to the coil. Again, this coil is made using a 9-volt battery. Okay, so this jammer can use anywhere from 27 to 45 volts for best results. The transistor could be a 2SC2078, NT235, 2SC1969, etc., etc., etc. Any RF type transistor that is BCE configuration that is rated for at least 4 watts. Now remember, on these transistors, the metal tab, the heatsink tab, is also the collector pin. So this back heatsink tab and this collector pin are the same exact thing. You're going to take a 15K, you can use a half watt or a 1 watt resistor, and that goes from base to collector. You're going to take a 47 PF capacitor rated at 1 kilovolts, and that goes from collector to emitter. You're going to take 2 times 47 PFs, connect them in parallel, rated at least 1 kilovolt, and that goes from emitter to one end of the 0.5 millimeter coil or the 0.7 millimeter coil, depending on what you use. They're going to take a 220 PF capacitor rated at 1 kilovolts, and that goes from collector to the other end of the 5 millimeter coil or the 7 millimeter coil. Okay, so the small coil is going to be either 77 turns of 0.5 millimeter or 57 turns of 0.7 millimeter. You can use either or. The main coil is going to be anywhere from 1 millimeter to 1.2 millimeter wire, and that's going to be 6 turns around the side of a 9-volt battery. When you're done coiling, you're going to make sure that you have an excess of 10 inches, which is 25.4 centimeters or 254 millimeters of excess. When you coil that up, you're going to try to end up with a coil that's 1 1/8 inches wide, which comes out to 2.85 centimeters or 28.5 millimeters. Okay, now once you got your coil finished, you have your excess here, you're going to make sure that the other end of the main coil connects directly to the base of the transistor. The top of your smaller coil is going to connect directly to the two 47PF capacitors. The bottom of your smaller coil is going to connect to the 220PF capacitor. The 220PF capacitor, since the transistor is going to be upside down, will connect directly to the collector. So with this transistor being upside down, this is the emitter, collector, and base. Okay guys, so if you have any questions about version 2, you can simply leave them in the comments section underneath this feed, or you can message me directly. I've created a circuit / schematic for this design, which I'll leave a link to in the description. And coming up, we have 8 new jammers, 4 new timers, and a whole slew of other things to come. So I'll see you guys soon.